Hey all, Mark Bago, Run Long After 60. Boy, am I glad you're here. This is episode 16 of the podcast. This one's a long one. I know they're all pretty long. I think they're going to be shorter from here on out. But this is Clifford Matthews, young lazy deadhead, Cliff Matthews. He's run lots of 100-mile races and 200-mile races. He's in search and rescue for decades. He's got so many good stories. Like every person I've interviewed, they've got stories that go on for decades because we've walked the earth for a long time. And I realized that I don't have to be so precious about each one of these interviews or worry about covering everything or little things. And I know we can't talk about everything, but I'm also realizing I can't wait to speak with each of my guests, prior guests, again in the future. Because really, that's what it is. It's about connecting and then tracking in the future, in the future, in the future. Okay, that's it. Short intro this time. I can't wait for you to meet this guy. What a pleasure it was to speak with him. Looks good, sounds good. We got some good stories. Okay, that's it. I think it's time. It's time for Clifford Matthews. Let's go, let's go, let's go. You know, every single time I start this Run Long After 60 podcast, I'm confident that my best episodes are behind me. And every single time I start, I realize, this is the one. Every time I feel that. So this guy, this is Clifford Matthews, but he goes by Lazy Deadhead or Young Lazy Deadhead. Maybe he cut off the young because he thinks he's old now. I can't tell. Cliff, thank you for saying yes, and welcome to the Run Long After 60 podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You know, I could tell we're having fun with my guests because after the episode's over, they start DMing me and say, oh, you got to talk to this guy. Oh, you got to talk to this guy. Oh, you got to talk to this guy. And, you know, Clifford Matthews was a guy who had to literally got my little book here. And as I'm talking to people, I'm writing down the names. And it's a little bit like a box of chocolates when I get those names. I don't know what I'm going to get. And look up Clifford Matthews and boo. All right, here we are. So this guy has he's done a lot of crazy things in his life, but he's done a lot of memorable things too that are part of other people's stories. And I think that's what I'm really excited about. He once led a Western States legend, Gunhild Swanson off course. You know, she finished the race with 6 seconds to spare, and I think she was 70 at the time, oldest finisher. And I think to date, that's still like the record, oldest, closest to the end. He rucked his way on the Bataan Memorial Death March. He's was part of the team that really went to find Caballo Blanco. It was the search mission for him in 2012. Then he keeps track of his DNFs separately in a celebration page, and I think maybe I might love that more than anything else, because I don't run for redemption, and I don't run to somehow say I've got to do better the next time. I don't do that. Every single one of my races is just a great experience, and I live it that way. And so when I saw Cliff's DNF page, I was like, oh man, this is good. Now, this is a long ass intro, Cliff. You know what that means? That means I'm set up because I'm ready for your stories, man. So let's out of the gate. Talk about the name. What's Young Lazy Deadhead? Why young? Why lazy? Why deadhead?
Well, so I mean, it's kind of tongue in cheek. So I mean, I feel young and whatnot, and I consider myself lazy because I try and do things the easy way. And in ultra running, like the easy way is just training and consistently training. And sometimes I do things the hard way where I don't train and then it really bites me hard. So I try and remind myself, do things the easy way. And so that means there is a little bit of discomfort perhaps during some of the trainings that I do. But it's well planned and spread out and whatnot. And then when race day, day comes, it should just basically be fun. Part of that's because I rarely race. Most of the time, I'm just running to have fun. I do actually compete in the Bataan Memorial Death March, and that's not as much fun at the end, but it's fun in the beginning. So it was just kind of tongue in cheek, and also like I think. I've never actually had an AKC dog, but I think AKC dogs have to have like 3 names. So this is also sort of an homage to that. Young, lazy deadhead. Oh, and there are also like a crazy crap ton of deadheads. Oh, and I used to see the Grateful Dead a lot. I mean, I used to joke that I did the
so
same
at least
number
legitimately you're a deadhead.
Yeah. So I used to joke that I had done the same number of marathon or longer races as I had seen the Grateful Dead. And people would think, oh, well, like, what's that number? And I'd say, well, between 100 and 200. But I can't say that anymore because I've done more than 200, marathon or longer events now.
All right. First, you look so civilized today. I mean, it's great to see you. It's like you're on behavior or something. Because as I looked you up and I'm reading, and we only know what, in some ways, right? We only know about each other by the things we say about ourselves or the way we present in the world, right? So thank you for sending a lot of information about you before this call happened. And you have a GitHub site that is so fascinating. I want to hear about that too before we get into the running and everything else. You have a GitHub site that essentially looks like it's a repository, or was for some quite period of long time, like Who Are You? Right? It's not a Facebook page, it's a GitHub, it's a website. And you're like, here I am, here's what I do, here's my running. Talk about that site. And do you still put entries up there? And what's the story behind it?
So the deal is I'm a programmer, and so I use GitHub from day to day for my normal stuff. And there's a format called MD Book. But before that, what happened is I train fairly hard for the Bataan Memorial Death March, and I do so by laying out a training schedule, and then I try to stick to the schedule, and I log things. So I started out by logging my trainings, and then later I got interested in changing my body composition, so I started logging my food. And people had asked me how I trained for Bataan Memorial, and I had all these notes myself. I'm like, screw it, I'll put it on GitHub. So I put my training stuff out there. Every once in a while, people will ask me, what I eat, and I asked, and by the way, there's a guy you've got to get on the show. So you absolutely have to get Bobby Keough on the show. This guy's this guy's a monster. He's my hero, and he's the first. I get off tangent, but Bobby was my introduction. And when I heard about 100 milers, I actually said to Bobby, "Well, that's really cool, Bobby, but there's no way in hell I'm ever running 100 miles." And yet now I've run over 30, and Bobby's run over 100. So at one point I was a vegetarian, but I didn't actually really like vegetables. I ate a lot of pizza and everything like that, and I was a little afraid that was going to hold my running back. And I knew about Bobby, and so I actually went up to the guy and I said, Bobby, what do you eat? And he's like, well, I'm vegan. And I'm like, jaw hits the floor and everything like that. He's ostensibly on a more restricted diet than I am, and this guy's a monster. Like he would run 100 miles, and then next weekend he'd run another 100 miles, and then they'd run 50 miles and everything like that. So anyway, when I wanted to lose weight and change my body composition, I started logging everything that I ate, and then I decided, it's kind of embarrassing and weird to put it on the net, but I'm kind of a weird person, so I put that on the net. And then later, I decided to actually take down notes, mostly for myself, but to try and make them at least a little bit humorous and memorable on various races. And I was doing that fairly consistently for a couple years, and then I had to stop it due to change in circumstances and lack of time. So I still update it a little bit. I think my most recent entry was entering my DNF for the Bigfoot 200 earlier this year, because I do want to, admit and learn from, my DNFs, and I'll probably get back to it at some point. But I did it in part because when I was starting out in ultra running, I got a lot of really, really good information from other people's blogs, and they used, I don't remember the name of the platforms and everything, but they use different blogs, and I'd read them religiously, and I'd learn about this and that, and pretty much every one that was written would have self-deprecating humor and and in jokes and talking about poop, because everybody poops, but runners talk about it, and running bloggers write about it. So yeah.
So you felt you were right at home, like there was no holds barred. Why not capture whatever I feel like writing about my adventures?
Yeah, basically. I mean, relatively few people read any of it, although I was complimented. At least one person training for Bataan Memorial did tell me that he looked at my plan, and it helped advise him on training as well.
I will, as I do, as the conversation rolls forward, I end up going back to the ultra sign up and going back to pages as you're talking about it. So I'll pull up the GitHub and I'll put up the Bataan Death March. So and basically sometimes I cover my screen where I'm talking, right? I cover this part of the screen so that as you're explaining, we'll see it up on screen. Right? So that's kind of how I do it. But I was impressed to see the efficient use of language. So you write very well, very tight. It's very clean and it's easy to understand and it's really impressive. And I just love that. And that started with the emails you sent to me, like, oh, okay, this is great. We should do this thing. Here's how I roll out. And it was really, those are really well done. And of course, there was that level of that nuance of the communication, the written communication you were conveying to me, that I was able to kind of click through. And then, so the more I got exposed to you, and maybe this happens all the time with everybody, but it was just really worthy of respect and celebration. So I love it. And I think your descriptions are spot on, and you put off this vibe that you are definitely a member of the trail running community, the ultra running community, meaning so many people are here to be in service to somebody else. And so
I am. I'm kind of on the sidelines. I kind of stay on the sidelines of various things that I do, and I don't think that I play a major role. But I'm around the people who do.
And I think though that's not that there's some real humility there, Cliff. Is it Cliff or Clifford? You don't care, or what do you go by? What?
Cliff, Deadhead, both okay. Work. That's okay. Clifford. Only a very small number of people call me Clifford, but I'll certainly respond to it.
How old are you right now?
I am 62 right now.
What that means, Cliff, is that we've got 62 years worth of stories. We can't cover them all certainly on a podcast, but what we can do, and I sensed you might be an expert at this, we can select really good stories from long patches of time, and we put our minds to it, like, oh yeah, during that, here's a great story. So you shared with me the Marathon Maniacs website that has you tracked 130 a ton of races. Talk to me about that progression from an early marathon maniac, clearly had done a ton of them, to something that started to go longer.
Well, I sort of fell into marathoning accidentally. I fell into running accidentally. I have a group of people that I go out to Las Vegas and play poker with every year. and and they have they do side activities, and one of them, or a couple of them, decided to organize a fun run, and it was like 2 miles, and I had not run, and I could draw this out, but one thing led to another, and I ran my first marathon in 2009, and I have to use run in scare quotes because I ran like 20 miles and then I limped like the remaining 6 in because my
is that Duke City? I'd never heard of that race. Is that Duke City?
It is Duke City, and Duke City is the nickname for Albuquerque, and so it's sort of the preeminent annual marathon, and they get competitors and everything like that. But they've been around since like 1985, I think. And I wound up doing the Duke City Marathon. I finished it, and then I had heard about this thing that is called the Bataan Memorial Death March, and it sounds disrespectful, but it's really very respectful. And at the time when I did it in 2010 as my second marathon, there were still several survivors of the actual Bataan Death March, and they gave talks. And that wound up changing my life. And then I got into search and rescue, and then I did more marathoning, and so on and so forth. But at some point, I got to be up my butt, and I wanted to run the Leadville 100. And this was, after learning about, the fact that 100-milers exist. Who knew? That sort of crap. And then I got to be up my butt. I wanted to run the Leadville 100, but I was too scared to make that my first 100-miler. So I planned on doing the Javelina 100, and then Rocky Raccoon, and then Leadville. And I executed that, and I was able to finish all 3 of them. And I actually wound up liking the 100-mile distance, loved Javelina 100, and I've come back to Javelina every year since. So I did my first Javelina in 2012, and I have started and finished Javelina every year since, including a couple weekends ago.
Outstanding. And I want to spend some time on Javelina and Hardrock and Leadville. You've covered so many. These are like the classic 100-mile races during a time when they were just becoming classic 100-mile races. But let me put a pin in that. I'll go back and get that in just a second. But I think it's really important to say that you're not just an ultra guy, really. You're definitely the ruck guy, right? So yeah. I want to get to Leadville and Hardrock and all that because that's what we're going to do. But talk about the Bataan Memorial Death March to people who've never heard of it before. Talk about what is ruck, and then was there a point when you realized like, oh, this is my thing? And you kind of just brushed over it a moment ago, right? When you it had a bigger meaning. You were participating in something that was bigger than you, right? So I'll stop talking again, but take me back to that. How did you discover the Bataan Memorial Death March, and really tell me a story about it?
So New Mexico had a governor named Gary Johnson, and later he ran for president as a libertarian candidate. And because he was a former governor in New Mexico, he got a fair amount of press. And, press releases often have blurbs saying that this person's done this and that and what have you. Well, Gary Johnson is a very accomplished amateur athlete. And one of the things that was in his press release was that he ran a marathon with a 35-pound pack on. And that, made me curious, and I did some, web searches, and next thing you know, I found out about Bataan Memorial Death March. Now, I knew in principle that it was a good cause, but to be honest, I did it for the challenge. And at the time, I really didn't know a lot about training my body, and I didn't know about preparing for things. And
when is this? Is this 2010, 11, 12? When is this? It has to be early.
I mean, I did my first one in 2010, and I was already a hiker. So I had hiked, and sometimes you carry a little bit of, stuff with you if you're hiking long distances. So I had already hiked 26 miles. In fact, by the time I ran my first marathon, I had hiked over what's called the Crest Trail. So before I was a runner, I was a hiker. I really fixated on wanting to be able to hike this thing called the Crest Trail. There's a mountain outside of Albuquerque, and it has a path over it. You can go north to south or south to north. And it's roughly 26, 27 miles long with a fair amount of elevation change.
Okay.
So I thought, I've already hiked this. I've already run my first marathon. This sounds like a really cool cause. How hard can it be? I'm gonna do this. But I didn't really know diddly squat about training. So leading up to my first one, all I did was like 4 hikes of varying, increasing distances with a bunch of weight in my pack. And
okay. No, okay. So that sounds like training to me. I mean, it's fine.
But only 4 the entire time for training for this event. And I read about the sand pit, and so I got really, I did all my training in soft dirt and everything like that. Then I actually got there, and you start out on asphalt, and then you go on this hard packed mud, and then you go back on asphalt. And the sand pit in the entire thing is only like 2 miles. And I did it with trekking poles and hiking boots, and like 6 miles in, my feet hurt quite a bit. And I really wanted to quit, but there are people literally doing this with prosthetic legs, or missing an arm, and they're just trundling along, and it's like, yeah.
What's on your feet? What's on your feet, Cliff? During that first time, what were your footwear? What was it?
Oh, I had like full on leather boots with big, that came up over my ankle and everything like that. So they're really
those are the boots you hiked in those 4 hikes, right?
Yeah. So I had hiked in them before, but I hadn't done it on really hard surface. And between the asphalt and the hard packed mud, it was, it was pretty hard. And my feet were just kind of tender because I just didn't, I didn't do a lot of running at the time. I ran some. I did not know what I was doing. It was at that point, it was easily the hardest physical thing I ever did. I was so beat up that I didn't realize how beat up I was. And each day I would wake up feeling better than the day before. And I'd think, well, gosh, now I'm over it. And that went on for like 2 weeks, which actually isn't a huge amount of time to recover, but it was totally new to me. But
the first time is going to take you a long ass time to recover.
I was so impressed by the actual veterans who had been on the Death March, and these were all older, fairly old people in 2010. I was so impressed that I actually said that I would go back every year as long as they were still returning. And then I also wound up joining search and rescue. And in search and rescue, being able to carry a pack and for long amounts of time with a lot of weight is an asset. And so I did go back every year up through 2019, and then in 2020 they didn't hold it for 3 years in a row due to COVID. But I trained those years because by then I had gotten really into it. I kind of go overboard in my hobbies sometimes, and that's like a big understatement. And so I trained up to where I eventually got second place overall, and I thought, wow, that's the best I'm ever going to do, because there's always going to be somebody younger, faster, stronger, and everything like that. So I was just happy to get second place. And in that year, I got second place, and a friend of mine got first place in the light division, where you don't have to have a pack. And I was thinking, like, damn, he got first, right? And I got second. This is awesome. And then later, I got I got lucky and took first like 3 years in a row. Yeah, so I
Yeah,
kind of became
you're
like,
you're the face of the civilian heavy division on their website for a long time. So what is that? As the almost shirtless guy showing up, like what is that? What does that mean to you? Like certainly it demonstrates there's community. There's the fabric there that is hard to cut. So congratulations on
well,
that. But what does it mean for you?
I wound up, I wound up getting into search and rescue, and I also got into a veteran service organization called Team RWB. And there are many different veteran service organizations, and I don't want to. I'm not a vet, so I don't want to, claim that I am. My dad, however, was Air Force, and I have twin daughters who are both contracted with the Army. So I'm in between. I got involved with Team RWB before my twin daughters got, involved with the Army. And my family would go to Bataan Memorial, and they'd see the presentations, and I think it left a mark on kind of all of us, in a good way. But man, they'd tell some tragic stories, and I realized that all my problems that I'd had, in the world, I was a bit of a dick. I mean, I still am, but I was also a bit of a dick then too. But all my problems are nothing compared to, a guy where they caught him trying to escape, and so they took a bulldozer blade and broke his legs, and I mean, I don't want. This is a fun thing, so I don't want to go down the hole of like all the crappy things that happened to these people. But I mean, it was tragic. So I started, buying books because at the memorial, they sell books, and so I've read like a dozen books and whatnot, and it really changed my life. And that's why, I joined Search and Rescue, and I also just realized that my problems aren't, as big as I used to think they were.
I think that's really the point of it, isn't it? Because you've heard stories from actual survivors and from vet friends that you don't share those stories, right? So, and you're literally, so what is carrying that weight, literally and emotionally? What does that mean to you even this day when you're out there rucking? What's that
Well,
experience
I
like
mean,
for you?
I think a lot about, various sacrifice, and sometimes I push myself. So the vast majority of all my training, including for training for Bataan Memorial, is just flat out fun. I get the runner's high. And so I like to run, and everything's super, super, super fun. But some things aren't fun, at least not in the normal sense. Like interval training, in my opinion, when I do interval training right, it just hurts, and you just sucks. But you don't do that much of it. And so when I'm training with my ruck, sometimes it hurts because maybe it's chafing me, or sometimes it hurts because I'm running hard and everything like that. And I think about some of the other stuff that's happened to other people. I'm like, suck it up, dude. Just suck it up. So, and I don't always suck it up. I mean, often I wimp out. Often I'm like, just allow myself to be a little baby and whatnot.
You've got a page dedicated to the Death March, and you do list on your GitHub, you list a bunch of books and stories from those survivors. And I think that is, you're honoring them in such a wholesome and good and unique way. And I'll make sure that I put those in the notes here, because all you have to do is click through one of them, any one of them, and really read them. And I think you're right. The level of gratitude we might get when we're sitting comfortable reading a story about resilience and horrors, it's good to share it with others, and it's good to soak it up and just kind of experience it. And I think my gut says, and your whole persona and how you present as a human being in the world, Cliff, is the way you look, the way you smile, the way you stand there, the way they've captured you. It's inspiring, and it's good. You're just a human that just shows up, man, for other humans, and I just love that. So,
Well, my wife cut my hair and trimmed my beard for this, and these are fake teeth. So I actually look better today than I have for for a while. But that's because I'm honored to be on your show, and I'm serious, and I don't and I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time singing your praises on here because it'll look staged or rigged or something like that or what have you. But I mean, you bring out a lot of good people, and it's just I I heard about you through Peter Livingstone, and so you interviewed him. So I watched it because he's my buddy Peter, and I really enjoyed it. And then later I started listening to him on. I found out how to queue them up on my phone so that it could be downloaded, and then on some of my long drives. So like down to Javelina and back, I listened to your stuff, and then I saw you had an interview on Buckle Up, and it turns out we have a lot in common and whatnot. But rather than this being a mutual admiration society, I'll try and get back on subject, but I don't remember what it was.
Well, I'm taking you right there. Be safe. We're on a safe ride here, man. It's a lot of fun. It's good to see you. And anyway, it's good to see you. This is fun. So next step is the big mountain hundreds and the 200 milers and DNFs and comebacks. And it never always gets worse, right? So you, in a short amount of time, 10 minutes ago, you just rattle them off. You started Javelina, then the Hardrock, Western States, Leadville. Come on, man. These are the classics. Giant 100-mile races back in the day when 100-mile was the thing. We now live in a universe where, 200 is the new 100, 300s of the new 200, whatever. But you were there, you have been there, and you are there. So I'm going to break these down a little bit because each one is pretty freaking important and interesting because you've got this many races, right? And I don't know this, but as Pete, John Parks, Catcher Corbett, all these wonderful racers and older athletes and just, with a lot of wisdom and insight sharing with me. And the pages are just the number of races and participation in those events just goes on and on and on. And when I started this, I didn't feel like I was just a baby newcomer, but I'm a baby newcomer. And I love that I'm right here getting into it, right? With a lot of shared things like having twins and riding motorcycles and other kinds of things. So, all right, subsegment A, the classics. 100-mile culture. You checked off some big names. Hardrock, Western States, Wasatch. That's supposed to be a beast. Leadville, Vermont, the first, one of the originals, all those. What drew you to the big mountain 100 races? And out of that, so what drew you to them in the first place? And then which of those classics felt the most like, coming home? Like when you first got there, when you got to that race, you're like, oh, this feels good. Okay, those are the two questions.
Well, I have a short memory, so I'm going to answer the latter one first. So Hardrock is just super awesome. And when I found out about Hardrock and I learned, sort of how hard it is to get in and that they double your tickets every year that you apply and don't get in, I realized I've got to start applying to Hardrock, immediately. Well, bear in mind that I didn't really know much about Hardrock when I had set my set on Leadville. But when I did Leadville, it was a Hardrock qualifier, and it changed. They removed it as a Hardrock qualifier, but the year I did it, it was a Hardrock qualifier. And I had also heard about Western States, and I also knew that was going to be hard to get into. And so the idea is if you want to do Hardrock or you want to do Western States, you do qualifiers and you apply every year, period, the end. Well, back then, the Grand Slam of ultra running was a big thing in that, if you get into Western States and you want to slam, you basically have to sign up for the slam when you get into Western States. So I got lucky. I got into Western States in 2015, I think. So I immediately signed up for the slam, and I go about training for it and whatnot. But I actually injured myself in a search and rescue mission of May of that year, and the first of the slam is Western States, and it's toward the end of June. And I didn't know enough about training to really not use my foot, and that wound up catching up with me. And so what wound up happening is I DNF'd Western States in 2015, but I had gotten into Wasatch through the lottery. So I DNF Western States, went on and struggled through, but made it through Vermont. And then I fucked up. I was overly confident at Leadville, and I was injured. So I was deliberately going very slowly at the beginning, figuring if I just make if I take as long as I can to make each cutoff,
Yeah.
that will take the least amount of wear and tear on my body. And then I was surprised to find that I had to go from like the second cutoff to the third cutoff in a time that I couldn't make it. So I wound up DNFing Leadville, even though I had finished it like 2 years prior. And that was
hang on a second. So this is August 2015, and I'll show those. I'll see the Western States, so you can see that like that was a struggle period that season. But August of 2013, you're 50 years old and you finished Leadville. I mean, it's Leadville.
Yeah.
And you'd done previously, just a couple months before, you did the Silver Rush 50, which is also in Leadville. That's the 50 miler. And so you were in 2013, you were crushing it, man. You did 45, 50 mile, 45 mile, 50 miles, 50 miles, 50 miles, and then you do Leadville in 2013. So you had done Javelina 100 before, but that was the first time you did Leadville. And so that's a very, as I understand it, that's a very different experience. Did you do Rocky Raccoon before that? Maybe you did.
I had. So my first 300 milers were, in 2012, I did Javelina 100. That's basically at the end of October. And then I did Rocky Raccoon, which is roughly, February of the following year. And then later that year, I did Leadville, and that was the plan. And I was super conservative. Now I've got friends who've done just like crazy stuff. I know 2 women and a guy who all decided their first 100 miler was going to be Wasatch, and all 3 of them succeeded. And that's just nuts. I mean, that's just nuts. I was super conservative. I went up to Leadville a bunch. I did their marathon. I did their 50 miler a couple times. I did their training camp twice. I wanted to get it done, and I did get it done. But these other people did Wasatch 100 as their first 100 miler, and I can't even wrap my head around that.
Right. Do you recommend it, Cliff, because how you did it? Because it is conservative, but it seems so smart. Go run the trails, go get familiar, acclimate to wherever you're at, right?
Yeah, that made sense to me. These people who have done it, big shout out to them. Who've done a really tough 100 milers as their first time, because in your first 100 miler, you're learning a lot of stuff that you've just never seen before. And if you do that on a really tough 100 miler, I don't understand how they were able to do it. But two different women and a man that I know all did Wasatch. The women are funny because what happened is Wasatch was a lottery, and they both put in figuring one of us will get in and then the other person can pace. And they both got in. And they both got in. They're like, okay, we're going to do it. And they did. And so people like that just inspire me. So if I'm doing something I haven't done before or what have you, I'm just thinking like, well, these other people did this cool stuff.
Right. I'm impressed by the how the deliberate nature of you doing those races. And you've done so many, it's a little hard once you get past about 60 races on Ultra Sign Up. Like I'm acting like I'm the expert here, but once I get past 60, I can kind of understand exactly what 60 means. And so I can jump to them and I'm all good. I can drive fine. But once you get way over, like you got so many, you get lost. Like, wait, where's this at? How many Javelinas did this guy do? It's fascinating. So just know that's the truth. It reflects accurately about, the efforts that you put out into the world. So go back for a second and talk to me all about Javelina, because Javelina is when Javelina is celebrated. It is a party atmosphere. I wanted that to be my first 100K this year. When I wanted to run my age in miles at Javelina, it would have been the first time. I was on the wait list for whatever, got way down on the wait list, and got nervous about it. Didn't think I'd make it, so I signed up for this run in Nevada because I didn't get into Javelina. But you got in long ago, right? 2000. I'm trying to look. Is before 13, right? So you
2012 should be my first Javelina.
And you've been there every year since?
Well, I have, and it has to do with the fact that my dad, while he was alive, lived within 2 hours drive, maybe less there, and his wife, my dad, remarried, and so my stepmom, he and they lived there. So I not only did I have a place that I could go to before and after and everything like that, but it's also a chance for me to see my dad. And so, when my dad was younger, he'd travel to Albuquerque and, and this and that. But as he got older, he wound up traveling less because, older people do travel less in general. And then my dad wound up with dementia. And so the first time I went to Javelina, my dad was still mentally pretty intact, and he and his wife Jean joined, or not joined, but came out and saw me run a little bit. They didn't hang out for the whole thing because it's it's a long time and it's hot. It's a great thing to place to be, but not necessarily for them. But they did, they came out and whatnot. And so I would see him every year. And then he died, and she continued to live in that house for a couple of years. And so by the time she left, I already had this streak, and streaks are fun for some people. If you don't like streaks, that's fine. If you don't want to do the same race in a row, different people are different. But I wound up with this streak, and then on top of that, I'd also been doing this other race called Deadman Peaks.
And I'm looking at that right now. That was before it was a couple of weeks before Javelina, and you would run that 50 miler, and then you'd run Javelina a couple of weeks later until 2017, when it looks like it was flip flop. You did Javelina 100 miler October 28th, and then less than a week later you did Deadman Peaks Trail Run 50 miler. You're crazy, man.
So this goes back to Bobby Keough. So
okay.
So, first of all, Albuquerque has a great ultra scene. There are some really, really talented people. So when Javelina was going to be my first 100 miler, I got to talk to about a half dozen people who had all run 100 milers, and I told them the same thing, which is, I really like Deadman Peaks, and it's, the 50 miler is, like a week before Javelina. Should I do them both? And every single one of them, except Bobby Keough, said, no, don't do that. Do not do that 50 miler the week before your first 100 miler. But Bobby Keough said, nah, go ahead and do them both. And Bobby's my hero, so I did them both. And I finished them both. And the thing is, if I had listened to other people, and I'm not saying they gave me wrong advice, but if I had listened to somebody else and not done it, I still would have finished Javelina, and then I would have patted myself on the back and said, yes, you learned, you were prudent. And I'd have grown up to be a completely different person. I'd have grown up to be a timid bunny. And I don't want to.
You would have had 10 or 15 50 mile fewer finishes because of that Deadman Peaks.
Yeah.
Later I interrupted you because you did the streak of Javelina, but then there's also now the streak of Deadman Peaks. So continue.
Well, and Deadman Peaks introduced a 100-mile variant. So the 53 miler is basically you run 26 and a half out and 26 back. Well, then they added the ability to do that twice, and you run 106 for the 100 miler. And the first year they did it, I chose not to do the 100 miler. I chose to do the 53 miler. But after that, I did Javelina, And, it takes a day to finish Javelina. And then 6 days later, I'd do another 100-miler. And that may sound like a big deal, but there are tons of people that do it, including another guy you got to get on this thing, and that's Mike Smith. So Bobby Keough's my hero, but I mean, Mike Smith, you look this guy up on Ultra Sign Up, and I think he's done over 300 100-milers. I mean, and he'll just click them off. You look at his Ultra Sign Up, it's like, yeah, 100-miler, next weekend 100-miler, next weekend 100-miler, and whatnot. And it's not as hard as it sounds. It is much easier to do stuff if you're trained and you stay trained, than, like if you're bouncing around. But then I wound up having some foot problems, and then my mom's situation caused me to train differently, and this and that and what have you. And so I've actually had a little bit of trouble in the last couple of years, including my Bigfoot 200 DNF earlier this year. But
Well, I'm not
mostly
gonna,
I've been getting stuff
I'm
done.
not gonna let you get there that quick. You just slow down there, Clifford. Hang on a second, because I'm gonna take you back to what I think was, wow, this is May 2018. This is 2018, May 2018. You really had a nice streak. Then September 2018. So you do Cruel Jewel, which is another classic that's just, crushes people. So you do Cruel Jewel, running over all those routes in Georgia, May of 2018. I have a monitor on the side, so I look to the side. But look at that. Look at that. September 2018, you decide that you just haven't had enough. You do Cruel Jewel in May. And then in September, you decide you're going to try a 200-mile race. You do Tahoe. Is that how it went down? What the heck? Okay, so now you level up again. This is only 2018. For God's sakes, I'm in 2020. It's 5 now. You got years to go. Hang on. I'm not trying to talk quicker, but Jesus, you have crushed these things. And you deliberately made decisions for some adventuresome kind of decide. And you're like, okay, you're going to go 200 and be gone. You level up. Was there a moment when you're like, well, 100's not enough? Or did you like, I really like 100s. These are great. I'm going to try something else or try something new or try something bigger. How did that happen? How'd your brain change?
I had talked to people who had done 200s, including Bobby Keough. He'll come up a bunch. And so I knew a little bit about them from, other people's experience. And it looked to me that it was probably going to be easier than some of the more difficult 100-milers I've done, because it looked to me like I would be able to basically go 50 miles, sleep several hours, go 50 miles, sleep several hours, and so on and so forth. And I was already doing, some other back-to-back stuff, because like the Marathon Maniacs doesn't list my my bicycling, but I would do the Jemez Mountain 50-miler, which is a tough 50-miler, and then often I would do the Santa Fe Century 100-mile bike ride the day after. And so my body was pretty good at turning around and everything like that. So my hypothesis was that I would be able to, do this, and it mostly played out for Tahoe. However, I did kick a rock fairly early on, and it wound up giving me some pretty bad pain. And at one point, I was stacking ibuprofen and acetaminophen, and just saying, if this pain doesn't, diminish, I've got to drop. And this was, I kicked the rock on the second day, and this was like in the third day, and it was just really, really giving me trouble. Now I didn't know whether or not I would get sufficient relief, but I did, and I wound up finishing it. And I had enough fun with the 200s that when COVID came in 2020, what happened is the balloon fiesta was canceled. And I know I've been crewing for the same pilot for quite a long time. I think I first started crewing in 1999, and that was before I was a runner. I didn't run my first mile until 2009. So I was a mostly out of shape programmer, and I joined this balloon crew. They're great people. It was a wonderful time, and I crew for them every October. And so when Moab came out, I'm like, yeah, I can't ever do this. interferes with the Balloon Fiesta. But in 2020, they canceled Balloon Fiesta. So I'm like, you know what? I can do Moab, except I wasn't that smart. When they canceled Balloon Fiesta, I didn't figure it out immediately. Instead, what happened is, later, all of a sudden it dawned on me, oh man, maybe I can get into Moab. And so I had to go through the wait list and this and that. And I really didn't know I was going to do Moab until kind of the last minute, and I was slightly injured. And that caught up with me a little bit.
But you still finish at 102 hours. That's pretty amazing. Let me take you backwards for a second, though, back to age 55 when you did Tahoe. So during the 2018 what a run you had while you were 15. 50K, 100 miler, 200 miler, 50K, 100 miler, 50 miler, 50K. And that is only the ones on Ultra Sign Up, not counting all the other little runs. So do you have an awareness? Let's talk about aging for a minute, Cliff. Do you have an awareness? You're 55 and you are on fire. As far as I can tell, on paper anyway, you're like, oh man, you found a groove. You're keeping your body fit. You must have a fitness level that you're aware of. But that's really my question is, at 55, do you have a sense that, wow, I am fit, I am 55, and let's go? Or do you not think about the age at all?
No. What wound up happening is my son lifts weights, and I'm more of a runner. And at one point, we both decided we would go and we'd get our body fat tested to see who had much body fat. And I had already done really well in Bataan Memorial, and I thought, I'm going to have pretty low body fat and whatnot. And then I got the results back, and I'm like, oh yeah, these aren't right. No way. And so then I researched stuff. So I did some web searches for, men with whatever body fat I had. And, there are pictures of them. They look like me. I'm like, son of a bitch. So I bought the book Racing Weight. And Racing Weight's hypothesis is that largely, you can lose a lot more weight as a runner than you can in most other sports. And do better as a runner. So I started doing some calculations, and I figured out, what I might get to and what might be the right thing. And I'm like, no way. If I get that low, I'm going to die. I'm not going to have any energy. I'm not going to be able to run because I'm whatever. So I started figuring out, I'm just going to drop weight, and we'll see how I perform. And then when I'm losing the performance, I'll say, okay, that's enough. And I dropped weight. My performance just kept going up and up and up. And so, I was really, really doing well. And it was either 2018 or 2019 when I ran Javelina in 20 hours, 11 minutes, something like that.
2018. That's 8. This is that year is so crazy. Are you vegan at this moment in 2018?
Oh yeah. So my trip to veganism was, I had heard Bobby Keough say that he was vegan, but I didn't convert, in part because it would have been rude to my wife, and of course later I convert, which kind of was rude to my wife. But the deal is what wound up happening is in 2012 I decided to try a plant-based diet for 2 months. And I was going to do it for 2 months because, if you try something for 3 weeks, you're not really going to know. You've still got, happy vibes driving you on, or it hasn't kicked in. But I'm like, I'm going to do it for 2 months. At the end of 2 months, if I don't like it, I'm not going to stick with it. And I never went back. So in 2012, my belief, and I'm not trying to tell anybody how their body works or what they should do. My belief was I could recover faster when I was on all plants. Now, bear in mind, that may have had to do just with the fact that I ate, like a crap ton of cheese before, and now I'm not eating cheese. I was a pizzatarian. So I'm not saying that my diet's optimal. In fact, lazy and lazy deadhead really is a short word for a fancier word called satisficer. I'm a satisficer, meaning I like to do enough to get the results that I want, but not a lot beyond that. I'm not trying to optimize. I'm not trying to get the absolute best diet, period, the end. I'm trying to get something that works for me. And so the veganism seemed to work for me. So now fast forward into 2018, I decide, I'm gonna get this book. I read this book and I'm like, okay, I'll try it. It's either gonna work or not. I don't think it's gonna kill me. I mean, technically you can fuck with your diets enough to kill you, but I don't think this is going to happen, so on and so forth.
Okay.
I'm monkeying around and I'm just seeing improvements, and I'm just, I'm getting faster and I'm feeling better. And so I did it. And when I did it, I'm a kind of analytical guy. I started taking down this food log. So eventually I wound up, and I maintain this food log to this day, and I'm a nutter. I put it on GitHub. So, I mean, you can actually see everything I've eaten, all the alcohol I've had to drink, all the caffeine. I log the analgesics I take, and it felt weird to put them on the net. But then I realized, there's the meme with the guy saying nobody cares. Nobody cares. So I'm logging it anyway. I don't use software. I just put it in a flat file. And then I can refer back to it, and I can say, what worked and what didn't, and and I can go back and I can say, well, this year that particular year I really killed it, and anyway, so that was my thing in 2018, and then I was doing pretty well in 2019, and then COVID came, and that got everything, the world got weird during that period of time, but
go back to where you and your son, 2018, your body test, the fat is like, wait, what? And so did you start doing strength training in 2018, or did you start lifting, or did you do any other training related things during that year that got you when you got faster and covered more miles?
Not particularly. So off and on, I've been doing. I do some body weight exercises, and I started doing those. I think when I was training for the Pikes Peak Marathon, and I would do them off and on. I'd get on the wagon and I'd try and do them consistently, and then I wouldn't do them for a while, and then I'd feel so bad about like starting up that I'd put it off, and so on and so forth. But I was, I had already by then broken my year into 3 training blocks. So my year is broken into 3 training blocks: training for Bataan Memorial, training for Hardrock or a Hardrock qualifier, and then the thing that comes after I've done my last Hardrock qualifier for the year, and training for Bataan Memorial, which I call my fuck around block. And in my fuck around block, I do a lot of races, and and towards the end of and then that ends in mid-November. So I actually am just about to start training for Bataan Memorial. So anyway, training for I got off. You were asking about strength training. I don't do straight strength training per se, but I do a lot of work with with a weighted pack, and so I figure it works for me.
Have you experienced, after turning 60, have you experienced any elements of muscle loss or atrophy or anything like that? Do you feel yet that your body started to get a little smaller, or no?
I doubt it. I mean, I track my results pretty closely in terms of a number of things. So my Bataan Memorial training is tracked like super closely. So I'll have a line item in advance for every single thing that I'm going to do in the training. I don't know if you've actually gotten to that, because that's not in the book. That's on a separate thing. But I'm more or less doing the same thing. So I'm doing them year after year, and some years I'm slower than others, in part because things happen. I stress fractured my leg training for Bataan Memorial. That kind of slowed me down. It sucked. It was not a lot of fun. My mom's stroke has really in me. So I've moved in with my mom, and I am originally was there just mostly to make sure she hasn't inadvertently hurt herself, because she was also sliding into dementia. Then I sort of have become a little bit of a personal trainer, a little bit of a nutrition consultant and whatnot. But it's been kind of time consuming. So I'm not doing as well on some of my stuff as I have in previous years. I don't think it's my age. I don't think it's, lack of muscle mass due to age. But if I don't do the trainings, I don't get the results from the trainings. My body performs reasonably well with respect to trainings. I know how to train it, and I know what I can expect out of myself.
Of Hard Rock, you've loved Hard Rock, and but the Bataan Death March is important to you too, and the Fuck Around block has a whole bunch of different kind of races, which are pretty amazing. Does the Death March and Hard Rock hold the same place? Like they're just as important every year?
They're very, very, very different. So it's certainly not the same place, but in terms of it's kind of like my kids, right? I love my kids to death. I love them all equally, but they're very, very different. All three of them. And so, Hard Rock's. So I got super lucky. I got into Hard Rock in 2019, and there was tragedy. There were avalanches, and the avalanches were really, really bad. They took out structures and caused tons of damage and whatnot. So they canceled Hard Rock in 2019. They rolled everybody, at least the people who hadn't run it yet. They rolled them over to 2020. And I'm like, well, there aren't going to be avalanches 2 years in a row, so we're good to go in 2020. Well, of course, 2020 they canceled it due to COVID. So they rolled me into 2021. Generally, you get into Hard Rock and you find out in December, and then you're running it in July. So you've got, 6 months to train and some time to decompress or what have you. So I wound up having 2 years and 6 months to train for Hard Rock. And then when I finally got in, and when it finally happened in 2021, we had the best weather ever. And Hard Rock often has really, really, really crappy weather.
Right.
So I had so much. So the Hard Rock people were excellent. When they canceled it in 2019, they held free things for people to do. You could just show up at Silverton, and they'd put on stuff for you to do. And I went up there for that, and then they did it sort of similar on 2020. And then I did it in 2021. I'm like, well, I'm coming back to Hard Rock every year, but I do plan on getting back up there quite regularly. And then there's a group of us, like Peter Livingstone and myself and a bunch of others, and we put in for it every year. And the idea is, if we get in, we'll crew and pace. I don't normally use crew and pacers, but I did for Hard Rock. My brother-in-law was my crew chief, and he did an amazingly good job. Peter Livingstone was one of my pacers. Mark Workmeister was another pacer, and we had another guy who didn't get to pace, Spencer Briggs, who was awesome. And those people really helped me get through Hard Rock. Hard Rock is difficult. It really is. I've done a bunch of other stuff, no crew, no pacers, and but Hard Rock is difficult, and it's also fun to share. It's because then they get to be part of it too. And
right.
It's hard to get into.
Right. So in 2020, because of COVID, 2020 is odd, but Silverton opens it up the doors. That's right. So you do a 50K on one day, the Silverton Alpine runs, and the next day, Kendall Mountain Run, a 12-miler, and you go to Los Alamos. You do Moab because it's open, October 2020. That's your first Moab, right?
Yes.
October 2020. You're 57 years old. That's October 9th. So you use 102 hours of your valuable, precious adventure time. You finish, and then you think, you know what? I can't leave my people at Javelina by themselves. So less than 20 days later, you go to Arizona and you do the Javelina 100. And then a couple days after that, you'd go to Deadman Peaks again and run 53 miles. And then you take a break. Then you take a break for a minute and get to 2021. How was Moab compared to, because now Moab, this is your second 200-mile race, right? You do Tahoe and then more hundreds and all the others, then Moab. How was Moab? This is COVID. Everybody's locked down, but you could run in Utah and you could do Moab in October, 240 miles. What was your brain? How was it? How did you feel getting ready to go there and do it? Because you said that like you learned at kind of the last minute you were able to do it, and you said, "I'm doing it."
Yeah, so I kind of got in the last minute. I was on the wait list, and then Candace sent a letter saying to everybody, we're if you don't get off the wait list by such and such a date, you're not getting in. Sorry, that's the way it works and everything like that. That date came and went, and I wasn't in it, and so I was kind of relieved because I had some work stuff to do, and it was kind of important stuff. But since I didn't get in, I'm like, I don't even really have to. I was going to work my ass off to get ready for that. And I'm like, well, since I didn't get in, I don't have to work my ass off. I can dick around. So, so I'm dicking around thinking like, yeah, it's probably best that I didn't get in, and then later Candace sends another email saying, oh, we still got slots. Do you want to get in? And I'm thinking like, wow, I'm like totally screwed because I've been just dicking around instead of working. But yeah, I want to get in. So, and I'm slightly injured. And I'm like, I don't know how this is going to play out. I'd only done Tahoe before, and so I didn't know how it was going to play out. And it turned out my injury didn't really bite me until toward the end. So I cranked out the first 200 miles without much trouble, and then I skimped on sleep on that final day. And then I wound up having temperature issues, and I don't normally have temperature issues. And because I had temperature issues, my pacer had expected to keep warm because he expected to go with me because he knows that I go when it's cold because I don't want to be too cold. And instead I wound up having to use like emergency gear, and then he got cold, and then I wound up with shin splints on both of my legs for the last 26 miles. So every single step hurt.
Oh gosh.
But it was only 26 miles left, and I can do the math. It's like, okay, well, I'm going crazy slow. It's going to take me 13 hours to finish these last 26 miles, but I'm still going to finish, And so I'd just whine to my buddy, and he'd put up with it. This guy has managed to pace me in some of the places where I have some of the biggest problems. Like he wanted to check out Javelina. He knows I do Javelina every year. So he's like, yeah, I'll pace you, Cliff, then I can see the course and it'll be a great time for everybody. And I had some new orthotics, and they caused this blood blister to develop that was like the size of a $50 and maybe, like a centimeter high.
Ouch.
Ouch. And so he's pacing me by walking the course because, it took a while for the blood blister to build up. So I had enough time in the bank that all I have to do is just, walk. And, it wasn't fun for me, but I mean, he got screwed. And he's a great guy. He's got a great sense of humor. So, I mean, I'm sure he'll watch this and laugh. But he'll also be thinking, yeah, I did get screwed. Every single time I pace that son of a bee, something happens. He was with me. He was my final pacer at Hardrock, and Hardrock. So
in 2021, 2021, right? Okay. So October 2020. October 2020, you guys do Moab together. That's October 2020. Then less than a year, right? July, Hardrock 100. You're 58. Okay,
sure.
Talk to us about
that. So Hardrock, it turns out is hard, and it's not like a 200. You don't sleep, or I mean you can, and maybe if you're like hiding from lightning, you might sleep, but I'm not sleeping, and I'm doing my stuff. And the deal is when I first started applying for Hardrock, my goal for Hardrock was simply to finish. But as the years ticked by and I got more fit, my goal was to run the largest percentage of Hardrock in what I call Wheee mode, which is kind of my tagline, Wheee with an exclamation point, where I'm just like having fun. So I want to finish, obviously, but I want to have as much time in Wheee mode. So I actually get out there. I'm pretty fit. We get amazing, great weather, and I'm just like, I'm having fun. It's like, whee, you know. But toward the end, the wheels fell off, and I wasn't in pain. I was just fucked up. Pardon my French, but I mean, I was, I got into an aid station, and I had, I think like it was a quad espresso, and I didn't. I felt awake enough that I didn't need it, so I'm like, I'll save this for later.
Okay.
And then later, I got so damn tired. I'm like, wow, good thing I have that espresso, and it didn't work though because I didn't drink it. But I kind of sort of knew that I had it, and I know that it sort of kind of makes you awake, and I just couldn't like think like, you know, you have to drink it. But Hardrock, Mark's my pacer, and he and I are doing this segment at night, and it's pretty deep in. This is toward the end. You're still up at altitude, and we're tooling along, and Mark's great at navigation. He's really, really good. I suck at it. And so I was super happy he was doing it. And he's leading me, and then there are people that are sort of following him. And we come across this guy, and this guy's standing up projectile vomiting. And we start talking to him, and he's like, "Oh no, just go ahead, run your race." And we're like, "Yeah, no, you're gonna get behind Mark. I'm gonna get behind you. We're gonna march." So we start chatting with the guy, and a lot of times, if you're at Hardrock, you ask people what were your qualifiers, and they'll rattle off like a dozen different races that they did over, you know, to get in.
Yeah.
He's like, Cruel Jewel. I'm like, yeah, Cruel Jewel, and what else? He says, no, just Cruel Jewel. And then it's like, you know, so you got on one ticket? Yeah, you got on one ticket. Okay, how'd you do it, Cruel Jewel? I came in first. And I'm kind of I'm kind of fried, and I don't think he's making it up, because who would make that up? I mean, and I don't think you're even going to hallucinate that. Like, you know, you hallucinate toads, and I saw Gandhi on a rock. I mean, you can all sorts of things, but you're not going to like imagine that you came in first at Cruel Jewel. And later, I looked the guy up, and he did. He had never run a 100-miler. But he was an incredibly accomplished runner, and he decided that he was going to do Cruel Jewel. He did. He took first. I can't remember the guy's name, but we could kind of figure it out if we.
That's amazing.
But we talked to him a little more, and he's like, well, you know, like, why are you with the back of the Packers? But the projectile vomiting was a hint. He's like, oh yeah, yesterday was worse. I had like killer headaches. Well, I mean, we're talking about somebody who's basically having high altitude cerebral edema and is literally risking his life. But we don't have a time machine. We can't go back. All we can do is, you know, make sure that he goes with us. And once we get down, that guy leaves, and he finishes with quite a bit of spare time on us. In the meantime, I'm like, all again, totally tired. I gotta stop, I gotta sleep, and I can't sleep, and I have this espresso, but I don't drink it because I can't put two and two together and whatnot. And so Mark got to see all of that too, that pacer. So yeah.
But you finished 43:50. That's no joke, man. You finished Hardrock. What?
I did finish Hardrock, and most of it was in Wheee mode. I mean, I was having fun, and Jamil was having a bad day. And of course, Jamil winds up finishing like way beyond, you know, way in front of me, because the guy's, you know, he's got chops and whatnot. But he was having a bad day, and so he like caught up with me, and we chatted briefly. I'm sure he has no memory of it because I'm a nobody. But you know. he passed me eventually, and I was just getting into Kroger's when he was leaving. And then if you actually look at our differences, he finished by a gajillion hours, before I did. But he started off, rough. The thing about these races is they're so hard to get into. If you're it was like, well, Moab for me, it wasn't hard to get into, but I only had that opening because of the balloon fiesta thing. So, yeah, I'm slightly injured, but I'm gonna try it anyway. And when you have streaks, you have to like make sure that you're a little bit cautious about what you do so that you can, keep that streak going. But I just my Deadman Peak streak is over because we instead took a family vacation and we went up to Colorado Springs instead to watch the Army Air Force game in person, and that was worth it. That was worth breaking the streak. But I did miss Deadman Peaks.
Yeah, well, all streaks. It was great while it lasted, right? It was great while it lasted. But
it was great while it lasted.
So you then go. What I'm excited about is that you're trying. You come back to some races, but you're definitely trying new and interesting and cool things. So at 59, 59 is a good year for you. By this point, it's April 2020 to May 2022, you run Cocodona. So were you excited? Now, Cocodona, I think 2022, I think that's the second year. I think Cocodona starts in 2021. Do you have a recollection or a story about Cocodona after having done Tahoe and you did Moab and you did the hardest hundreds, you do Hardrock, you do Javelinas, you got so much, you're just ready to go.
Oh, hell yeah. So I'm a big fraidy cat. So I often don't do races the first year they're held. And Aravaipa is really, really good at what they do. But, the first year for Cocodona, I'm like, I'll let them work the bugs out. So, of course, it didn't go off, I don't think, flawlessly. I mean, I wasn't there. But, the first Cocodona went really, really well. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to be there. So I set up everything to go for Cocodona. Now, by this time, I have a plan on how I'm going to do 200s. And it's not necessarily the best plan, but it seemed to work for me. And so I'm going to apply this plan for Cocodona. And I'm all set and whatnot, but I missed one of their training runs, and so like the first day of Cocodona is going to be like the hardest because they have this big span it's really hot, it's steep and everything like that, and they do a training run, but I can't make it, so I'm whatever, I'm still going to do this thing, and then they have a fire, and fires are tragic stuff, and I don't. I don't want to be cavalier and talk about, we poor runners had to run a different route when like fires are like really bad news. But so I do take the seriousness of the fires into consideration and whatnot. But it did mean that they rerouted the course, and it became easier. And so I was able to finish the first Cocodona, and then I sort of realized that, I hadn't really finished like the real course. So I wound up going back and finishing the real course, the next year. Same thing happened with me with Bigfoot, in that right before I did my first Bigfoot, they rerouted the course and I finished the easy course. I went back next year, which was this year, to do the real course, and I DNF'd this one. But anyway, the first Cocodona was crazy fun. I was able to run and sleep quite a bit, so I'd wake up refreshed and able to to run again. And if I remember correctly, like maybe 2 weeks later, I did the Jemez 50 miler, and the Jemez 50 milers are pretty tough 50 miler.
So this is May and June, July of 2023.
Well, that's the second year I did. That was the second year I did Cocodona, and
Yes.
I had a foot issue then, and the foot issue made things much less pleasant. And I didn't think I was going to be able to finish Cocodona, and I wanted to quit, but I one of my daughters was going to be doing some really tough stuff, and I didn't want her quitting when she was doing the tough stuff. So like the second Cocodona was completely different in that it wasn't physically fun. It's still a super great course. You got to see all sorts of bright, stuff, but I was in some discomfort, and that was also causing me to be slow. And the slower you go, the less time you have to sleep. Well, I'm already used to doing the 200s by getting these big sleep blocks in. Well, if you don't get the big sleep blocks in, you don't recover. It's a whole different thing. And it physically, it was really, really annoying. And I didn't even think I was going to be able to finish it. I'm like, I'll just go another day rather than quitting. But if I quit now, I cut my losses. And I went another day, and I went another day, and I went another day, and I did finish it. And that was cool because my daughter then later did like the toughest thing that she had ever done, and she didn't quit either. So
that's pretty cool, man. That is pretty cool. Yeah, 111 hours for the 2022. You're at you're 59, and as you turn to 60, that's you're 114 hours. So this is a couple hours difference. The course, they went back to the old course, right? And so it's a little harder, but you're at 60, you're crushing it. You're crushing it. Jimenez 50 said, then you do Western States. How many times have you done Western States?
So I had DNF'd in 2015, and I didn't get in again until whenever that was, 2022, I think it was.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if I'll ever get in again, when I'm young enough to finish it. And so I basically had to get it done, and I had a foot issue. So, I wound up having cortisone in my foot. And on that one, I was stacking. Everything went pretty well up to around 70 miles in. And then the foot issue was really, really giving me trouble. And so, I started stacking ibuprofen and acetaminophen, and I'm paying attention to how much I'm taking, when, and everything like that. But I had never made it past mile 85 before, so I didn't know what to expect. And my guts were sort of torn up because of the stuff that I was, eating, and the caffeine I was taking in, and this and that, and it wasn't. I didn't think there was much chance of me not finishing, but I really didn't know sort of how much of a buffer I had. And then eventually I got to a point where I'm like, I can just walk it in from this point on. And so I'm walking, and people are going like, hurry up, dude, hurry up. You don't want to miss it. And I'm like, nah, I've done the math. I can, and my pacer, which was Peter Livingstone, was it was also double checking the math, because sometimes when you're really tired, you really botch the math. At least I do.
Right. Okay. So I didn't remember that Peter was your final pacer at that. That is fantastic.
Well, he was my only pacer.
Cocodona,
so he
2023.
He paced me from when the first place that you're allowed to, which is like about 60 miles in, I think, till the end.
That is fantastic. You finished 29 hours, 45 minutes, 12 seconds. So you had 15 minutes, man. You were fine. You definitely.
I was fine. I was going slowly, and I could have gone faster. It's just the faster I would have gone, the more it would have hurt. And I don't like pain. I can put up with pain, but I don't like it.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to talk about DNS in a minute here, but I want to jump forward to the next 200. So you do Bigfoot. I think this is what I'm so excited about, because I feel like, I'm not going to life's short, and life can be really short. Right. So I pick races, not because, I don't run for redemption or revenge, so I don't have to redeem myself for anything. I bring my A game, and whatever happens with that race happens. I'm not coming back. But I think part of it, Cliff, might be that I'm like, oh, look, man, there's so many races and there's only so much time. Even if I go forward with the centenarian decathlon, thanks to Dr. Peter Attia, and I'm at 62 and I got, almost, 40 years left. Even that says there's still, so many races. So I don't have the need at the moment to kind of go back and like, oh, do something. That's just not who I am. And so when I see the variety of races and you've got so many races and you're still doing all these different races, it's really exciting, especially because when you started, there was no such thing as all those races. Candace Burt had to put on her first 200 first, and then, all those things. So between her and so Aravipa and Jamil, boom, explodes. And she kind of gets in here and explodes. And now UTMB, I think, is so hungry to, as a business model, to pay attention to what Destination Trails and now Aravipa have done. The UTMB is coming in, gobbling up all these races. And I think ultimately it's good for all of us. If we're in the community, I love it. So the setup for that is August 2024. You're 61 years old. You're my freaking hero by this point in time. And you're going to do Bigfoot 200-mile endurance run around Mount St. Helens, Washington. That's August 2024. Talk to me about that. Talk to me about your Bigfoot experience 2024.
Well, I'm on a low budget, and so I'm driving there, and Pete's going to be out there, So first of all, I had signed up for Bigfoot the year prior.
Okay.
But there was a family conflict, and the family comes first. So I'm like, I'll take the hit. Let's roll me over to the next year, and I'll do it the next year. So the family stuff went great. So that was worth it, and I'll make those trades, every single time. But so 2024, I've already rolled over. Now in 2023, Pete was going to pace me, but I had to roll it over. So in 2024, Pete decided instead of pacing me, he was going to do it too. And so neither of us were going to have pacer or crew, but we'd see each other a little bit here and there. We wouldn't see each other much because typically, you go a different speed and then you never see the other person until the finish. And then you have a lot of fun at the finish. Well, as I'm, driving there, Pete tells me, there's a fire, dude. And we didn't really know what was going to happen per se. And they had to do a last minute reroute, and it wasn't a, you go around the fire thing. It was the fire cut off a big chunk of the course, and they did what they could, and it was an awesome thing that they did. And what they did is they turned it into a double out and back. You started at the finish. You ran backwards on the course, roughly 50 miles. If I remember correctly, it was closer to 46. Then you turned around to the finish. Then you did that exact same thing again. And psychologically, that was really difficult for a bunch of people. It wasn't difficult for me because that's sort of how Deadman Peaks works. It's just
okay.
at least the 100-mile version of Deadman Peaks, you do that, but it's with shorter distances. So all told, you do 106 miles, whereas this one, all told, you were supposed to be doing 200 miles. Although it came short, and I'm not complaining. I'm just from a point of view of how hard it wasn't as hard physically. For some people, it was very hard mentally. For me, it wasn't hard mentally. So I actually benefited from the fact that it wasn't as hard physically, and I got her done. I got my Bigfoot belt buckle, and by then I've done, Candace's first 3, and I'm pretty happy. But I'm also thinking I didn't do the real thing. I got to go back next year and do the real thing. So I set up for the next year, and the next year was this year, and this year I wasn't able to finish it. But it was fun, and because it was the double out and back, I actually did get to see my friend Pete, and I met new people. There's a guy, Daniel Bailey, and I couldn't remember his name for like the first like 5 times I saw him. And every time he'd be humorous about it, be like, yeah, no, I'm Daniel. And I'm like,
Yeah, I'm
I'll
still that
remember
same
next
guy.
time.
Yeah.
And it took me forever, but now I follow the guy on Strava. He's an excellent guy. He does a lot of fun stuff. He's got a great sense of humor. And so you meet these people, and it's fun.
Yeah.
And now with you signing up for it, I wound up putting myself on the wait list. I have some financial obligations that I got to meet in order to do it, and it's no longer a Hardrock qualifier. And that's a big thing because I don't have a Hardrock. I have a Hardrock qualifier for the 2026 lottery, but I don't have one for 2027. Western States qualifiers you have to renew annually. You have to do a new one annually. Hardrock qualifiers you only have to do every 2 years. So I do, luckily, even though I DNF'd Bigfoot this year, my previous Bigfoot was a Hardrock qualifier, but they've taken all the 200s out of Hardrock qualifier. So if I do Bigfoot, in 2026, that will be in addition to 1 or 2 Hardrock qualifiers.
Right. Okay, so the math can work out for you. That's good. I want to go to DNFs in a minute, but before I do, there's only one last thing we haven't talked about, because some of your races, only a handful, excuse me, are time races, 12 hours, right? So talk about that. Like I haven't tried that.
Okay, so there are a number of formats where I'm like, yeah, I'm not fucking ever doing that. And 100 miler was one of them. It's like, yeah, I'm not running 100 miles, period, the end. And of course, I did it. And time races are kind of like that. And earlier this year, I did a mountainous looped race that was 97 slightly over 1 mile loops. And it was actually a lot of fun, although I did have some foot discomfort that I was dealing with. But yeah, so I don't remember how or why I started doing them, but some of them appealed to me. But one of them, which I'm doing tomorrow, was created by a friend of mine. And before I get into this, alcoholism is a real thing, and some people really have problems with alcohol, and they shouldn't be drinking. And I don't want to make light of alcoholism. It's killed friends of mine. However, some people drink and have fun, and there are a number of running events where alcohol plays a role. And in this particular one, it's held in Las Cruces. There's a big hill called Tortugas Mountain, and it's a 24-hour race, and you do as many 4-mile laps as you can. And this is mountain. I mean, this is hilly terrain. It's not, it's not crazy.
Yes.
And it started as a drinking event where you had to drink a beer before each lap, and it got more and more popular. And they had to downplay the drinking, but the drinking division is still done. It's on BLM land, so this is legal. And so the old rules were that you had to drink the beer before you started the lap. The new one, you can actually drink the beer during the lap. And it's how many 4-mile laps you can do in 24 hours. Drinking a beer each time, if you're in that division. And I'll be doing that. I'll be starting in less than 24 hours.
Okay.
In the beer division.
In the beer division?
Yeah.
Sweet. All right.
Peter Livingstone used to hold the course record in the beer division.
Oh, that's hilarious.
But of course, I had to take it away from him.
Yeah, because that's what friends are for. So
exactly.
Okay. So now that we cleared that up, let's go to DNFs. DNFs are a strange and interesting sort of thing. For me, they're interesting because they're not always on Ultra Sign Up. They just don't, because it's up to the race director really to post these things. So I ran, my first DNF was in 2019. I was in the middle of the summer, the Los Angeles Trail Forest. Can't remember what it's called. Los Angeles Trail Forest Trail Run. Anyway, I was signed up for the 50K and I was trained for it, ready to go. Morning of the race, I realized there's a 60K and I'm like, oh, 10K more, I'm doing 60K. Let's go. And I didn't know anything about course management. I didn't learn that term until later the day. It'll become clear later. And I love the race. It's exhausting. It's hot. It's crazy, but I know I can see the end in sight. I just know, and I'm very excited about it. I get toward the, I get past 50K, almost to the, I get to the 50K mark and I only have 6 miles to go. And it's really just a 3 miles up and 3 miles down and a home run. So something like that. So I'm trudging up this hill. It's crazy. It's hard, but I'm just so excited. And I get to the top and of the hill, the last aid station, and the aid station workers are really, they're just sad. The faces are downbeat. And I think something terrible happened. And I'm like, number 999 coming in hot, man. Like I'm still excited. This, moron running slow, but I don't know that. I feel like I'm just doing it.
Right.
I get there and he's like, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry you timed out. And I don't know what that means. And I said, what? No, it's daytime. What do you mean? I'm ready to go, man. Let's go. He says, no, he puts his hand on my shoulder. He says, no, I'm sorry, man. You're too slow. You didn't make the cutoff. And I don't know that term yet. In 2019, I didn't hear the word yet. I didn't know what that was. Never heard of it. What? And then the aid station, like, yeah, man, we're sorry. And I'm like, in my head, Cliff, I know there's people coming behind me. I know it. I mean, I know it. Yep. And the guy says, no, man, you're the very last person and you don't make it. And I'm like, well, what? So I'm like, I really don't understand. And then they're like, look, I'm sorry, but now it's a safety issue. We can't let you go back on the course. And then at this point, it's like 3 PM. It seems early to me. Like, what? And he goes, no. So I helped them pack up the aid station and I jumped in the pickup truck and they, drove me down to the start line or whatever. Anyway, that day I learned about course management. But also that was the day that this is great, but what an adventure. Too bad I didn't finish. So I have this DNF, but God bless him. He's just passed this year. Great gentleman, just a kind man. And he was the race director and he didn't put up the DNF. So once I got on the ultra sign up and I really started to understand what it was, I'm like, well, where's my DNF? And so I called the race driver. I said, can I have the DNF? Like, I want to put it up there because I know I got the bib and I wrote DNF on it. And the guy's like, nah, it's like now Gary has passed and it's like, I don't have it. I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine. So I'm okay with it, but I know it's real. So that was a bizarre thing. So I knew it wasn't captured anywhere. So when I look at your GitHub site and I realize, oh, look at this guy's good. And you sent me an email. I'm like, wait a minute, this guy, he puts his DNFs right up on the page because why not? It's part of the story. So talk to me about that. We see that, and I'll flash these up. In 2014, 15, 16, you have some DNFs. It's clear you're trying to figure it out. That was including Western States and Leadville. And then finally, August 2025, that's Bigfoot, and you DNF in 2025. So start talking about DNFs by talking about Bigfoot 2025, what exactly happened, and then wax philosophic and poetic about DNFs in general.
Well, Bigfoot 2025, I still had a lingering issue in my right foot that I hadn't properly determined what was causing. And it's only been since Bigfoot that I kind of have a big belief of what it was. And so I had a little bit of trouble with my right foot there, but I had a different trouble with my right foot from having done a timed ruck run in May of this year.
Oh,
so
okay.
On May 3rd, I wound up doing a timed ruck run, and it turned out there were no other ruckers doing it. So everybody else was running in a completely different category. I could have done one lap and I would have taken first and last. But, I had never run with my ruck more than 50K. So I ran like a token amount beyond 50K. And then there was some lightning in the area, and lightning I take fairly seriously, especially when I'm wearing an external frame pack with, metal, uh, uprights and whatnot. So I didn't do as much as far as I could have in 12 hours, but it was the first year they were doing it. So, I mean, I got first and last and course record and, what have you. But I also injured my right foot in a different place. So going into uh, Bigfoot, first of all, I don't think many people would have signed up at the very end, and I signed up at the very end. So I mean, I could have just chosen not to sign up. So I wasn't committed because of the price or anything like that. But I signed up because I don't want to grow up to be a baby. So I actually signed up in part because I was afraid of it. I knew that it would be an issue of pain management, but I figured I could do it because I sort of know what I'm doing and this and that and what have you. And I'd get to see my buddy Peter, and I'd get to see Daniel Bailey, and those races are put on really well, and I'd be able to see the beginning of the course, no matter what. And I'm a stubborn guy. I'm going to be doing this race anyway. Screw it. I'm doing this thing. So we start out, and you go through this blast area, and you're walking on these igneous rocks that are kind of big, but they're super grippy because they don't have any dirt on them and everything like that. And I've got a couple trekking poles, and I'm tooling along, and I'm not thinking about the fact that I had trouble getting shoes for this race. So I was wearing an old pair of shoes, and they didn't have as much tread on them as I'd like. And I slipped, I fell, I broke a trekking pole, and I got a big ass abrasion on my left side. And one thing led to another, and eventually I wound up the thing that was the 2-year-old foot problem that I hadn't fully diagnosed and everything is really what finally got me
Oh,
to
okay.
DNF. And I had an excellent person. Her nickname is Thor, and she taped my feet and everything like that. But I just couldn't. I couldn't do the segment that's out of I forget where you call it, but roughly around the 100-mile mark. You're halfway through, and then you have a water crossing in my feet where the blisters were so deep that when the water got in, it got really bad. And then it's also it has the most uphill. And I basically wound up waiting for the sweeps, thinking, not thinking it through, that the sweeps were going to take me back down, the shorter segment. But no, I had to do the entire segment with a sweep, and I'm mortified because I'm causing them to take hours longer to sweep that section than they would otherwise. And I felt really, really horrible. I offered to give them money, they wouldn't take it. I offered to buy them merch, they wouldn't take it. And they're just a darling couple, and I can't think of their names off the top of my head. I would have had to research it. I
Yeah.
have it written down somewhere,
It,
but
you're
they're just super darlings and everything like that. So
you're sweet, and
I finally I had the plug pulled on me. Now, if I hadn't have stopped and waited for them, there is a chance I could have made it to the next aid station, but I don't think so. I was ground down to slow. So I don't like pain, but pain does slow me down, especially if it is if it's bad enough to upset my stomach. And most pain doesn't upset my stomach. But really, really, really bad pain will, and I've only experienced it here and there, will like kind of throw my stomach off. And it was also affecting my eyesight. And so that slowed me down. And I also, I did 10 years of search and rescue, so I didn't want to do something where I went from, a slow, annoying person to somebody who would have to be carried out on a litter or helicopter or
Understood.
anything like that. Which is ironic
Yes.
because my very first ultra, I was kicked off course, even though I was making the cutoffs by an overzealous aid station captain who thought I wasn't wearing enough clothing for the temperature, which it turns out I actually tend not to wear as much clothing as other people, which is a separate story, perhaps for a separate day because we're running long.
Well, listen, I think your awareness, situational awareness is high because of the services you provided to others. So as the sweepers are coming by, of course they're a sweep. They know that's the job, man. But just think of it. They had someone who is experienced and knowledgeable and kind and generous to be the person they're getting to the end, right? I've heard plenty of stories where, sweepers, again, it is a little bit like the box of chocolates because you never know what you're going to get. And most of everybody's trying to be kind and compassionate. You're a good guy. So they walk you there. But luckily that was you and not somebody who was just in a bad way. And then it would be taxing on that sweeper. But that wasn't
They
you.
were super polite. They were explaining that they were in love and they got to see things that they wouldn't have seen otherwise, like a sunrise that they wouldn't have seen. And I'm thinking like, wow, that is a very diplomatic way, of trying to, to ease my pain. And I was in a lot of physical pain, but, I've been in physical pain before. I'm not bragging or anything like that, but I mean, it does go away. But when you some things don't go away, and it's not. I mean, these people weren't going to die of for being out there. But I mean, ruining somebody's day. If you make somebody else's day shitty or something like that, I mean, sort of that doesn't go away. You cost them a day. So I was more concerned about the fact that I was really, jacking up the sweepers time than I was about the pain. I wanted to go faster, but it was I was ground I was ground down pretty raw at that point.
Yeah. And so you maintain the website, the GitHub postings, and you capture Bigfoot 200. Bigfoot 200 2025. You post it here. And you have a great page about DNF. So talk to me about that, not about the page, but just the psychology of a DNF. Like, what does it mean? What do you think when someone's going to listen to this and two guys, 62 talking about this and that, you've got 8,000 races. I have just a couple. But when people start to comprehend what a DNF is, talk to us about that philosophically. What is it? Well, is it important? Talk to us.
Depending on where your headspace was and everything like that, DNFs can be kind of traumatic, especially since a lot of people DNF and then later they realized that if they had just calmed down for an hour or something like that, they would have done better. So I put my DNFs out there for a number of reasons. A lot of what I write, even though I try and write it humorously enough so that other people might enjoy it, it's mostly notes for me to refer back to so that I can do to do other stuff. And so they wind up there's a pithy aphorism about learning a lot from DNFs, but I don't remember what it is. But the basic idea is, I mean, you can learn a lot from a DNF. Well, my memory kind of sucks. Oh, it's actually getting better because I'm actually paying more attention to remembering things. But I write stuff down so I can go back and I can look at it. So I want to write down at least a little bit of notes to myself so that I know that I've done this. But it's also there if somebody else, can see, because, you can look at somebody's thing and you can look at somebody's ultra sign up and not see any DNFs. And then, they do in DNF and you think, oh my, that, this person might be feeling horrible. Maybe I should share, some of my stuff. Cause I mean, I had a spectacular one when I led Gunhild Swanson off course, because that was because I was in a huge amount of pain. I missed a turn. didn't realize that I had missed a turn. Some other runner asked me if I was on course, which is sort of a weird question to ask because, maybe he didn't know if I was a runner, but I said yes, definitively, because in my headspace, I was on course because I didn't realize I had missed a turn. And then I was, and he said, are you sure? Or maybe I even volunteered that I was sure because people had passed me and nobody had come back the other way. Well, that doesn't actually really prove that you're on course. All that proves is that you were on course at one point. But you get your mind gets kind of fried when you're in pain after you've been up for a bunch of time and everything like that. So this guy starts following me. Well, Gunhild had her grandson as her pacer, and they saw me and the other guy. So, if I were just one random Yahoo, maybe they wouldn't have done it, but there were two of us. So she and her grandson, follow me, and, we're going up this hill, and we're, you go up a hill and you're just like getting ready to, go down the hill. And this was 2015. So people don't necessarily have everything on GPS watches and everything like that. And we finally get up to, there's a road and there's no course marking or anything like that. And then we find a sign that says, Western Trail, this way, and just like, oh fuck me. And again, I'm in a lot of pain at this time because I had injured myself on a search and rescue mission earlier, the like 6 weeks prior, and it hadn't healed, blah 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 blah. So I wound up realizing when I got into the next aid station, which is around mile 85, I still had time, but I would not make the next one. And again, I would potentially have required search and rescue to come out and bail my ass out. And so I made the decision, I'm not going to go out and attempt this next segment and potentially, tie up valuable resources. And I was absolutely convinced that Gunhild wasn't going to finish, and not because I'm selling her short, but I mean I'm all fucked up. And a lot of times, when you're in a state, you like map your state into other people. So I'm in a lot of pain. I can't finish, and I've eaten up a bunch of time. Blah 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 blah. So I was in so much pain that they took me from that aid station to the finish line, and I had my wife get me to the hotel as soon as I could, or the motel as soon as I could, and and I went to bed and whatnot, and I was absolutely convinced, that she hadn't finished. And then it was like the next day that I decided to take a look, and sure enough, like, she had finished, and it's like, holy fuck, she finished with like 6 seconds to spare. So I wasn't there to see that. I could have if I hadn't been such a baby and just want to go back to my motel room because I'm fucking tired and hurting. And then later, in an interview with her, she describes this situation, and she actually gets like some little itty bitty point wrong, like where we went off or something like that. And I thought that was amusing, just like I thought it was a little amusing that Christopher McDougall winds up referring to, different size shoes and everything like that. It's like, no, I was there.
Let's pause that for a moment, but you segued great into the Gunhild Swanson story. So, and you talked about, and I love that this was one of your DNFs, but it wasn't hers. When you got to that top of that road, when you realized there were no signs, is that when you and the four of you then realized you had to turn around and go back the other direction, or at what moment did you realize it was turn around and you had to turn around and go back?
Oh, I mean, once we got to that road and there was no flagging, it was super obvious that I was wrong and I had misled people. I misled people because I was so overconfident with my response. Are you on trail? Yeah, I'm on trail. I know I'm on trail because people have passed me and they haven't come back, the other way. And you say, if you say something, with a definitive tone in your voice and everything like that, then people buy it, and they don't think like, well, because I explained my logic, and my logic completely faulty. But I said it in such a way that you don't even look, you're not probing the logic and trying to figure out whether or not that makes any sense.
And it's smart, and now it's a good part of the story. I love it, and that was just one of your DNFs, and I love that she was able to get back there, and she did finish within 6 seconds, becoming the oldest finisher Western States at that time, 70 years old. Pretty amazing, and also from your share with me just now, like, yeah, we have to. It's only us out there. We're just out there, but we're just us. It's me and us in our head, right? Me and my brain, and so we have to, we have a relationship with it over time that I think changes over time. And you've got so many experiences that, and now by this point, your experiences can fall into the category that we might call it another one of those. You've got a whole bunch of experiences. And when you encounter a similar one, you're like, oh, okay, it's another one of those, right? I feel that could be the thing. I just had this great experience, never expected it, completely not where I was going with it at all. Was out in the trails in the desert of Nevada, and middle of the day, I'm like smoking it, man. I've never built up so much time buffers from a cutoff, because my only issue when I went out there was I didn't want to get lost. I'm not going to mess this up. And I get out there, and they have flags which are not every time I just got to a moment where I start to feel a little, not panic, but a little bit, okay, then the flag showed up. So I thought the race director was perfect in laying them out there. This is not an orienteering challenge. It's a freaking ultra marathon. It's not supposed to be a mystery of where you're at, right? So, okay, but I head out on this one, it's early days. It's 20 miles in or something. And then I'm going out this little loop from 20 miles to 27. And I head out there and I don't see the signs. I trust the flags, but I don't trust the signs. I don't know what the signs mean. And I end up going from mile 20 and I'm passing 27 and then I'm 29. I'm like, what is going on? I start asking runners on the trail, and some of them aren't that sure. They don't remember because the course itself has lots of little loopy loops. But I finally meet a couple of people. But here's the thing that I loved. And this was, I looked at my watch and it's like, I know the cutoff for that particular getting back to wherever I'm supposed to be, it's not till like 6:30 in the afternoon. And at that moment, it's like 4:05. I'm like, okay, relax, Mark. In 2.5 hours, you're going to be fine. You're not lost. I mean, it's the same hills. It's not, right? Most I went off course was 7.5 miles. So, or by that time, it was probably like 3.5 miles. And I knew I had to retrace my steps and get back there. So I got back there just fine. And I still had, by that point, I had 45 minutes left. So I had got a big buffer and then kind of burned through time, which was the bummer. And then I added 7.5 miles to my race. So I'm coming in, checking back in at the 27-mile mark, but actually I'd run, 35. So by the time I get to the 35-mile aid station, 3 steps down through 2 more aid stations down the road, I just run out of time and I can't cover by that point, I smushed myself down so much that I only had 1 hour to cover 4 miles, but it seemed almost really impossible for me in that shape to cover 15-minute pace where I was heading. But didn't matter. Let's go. Going to give it a try. I had a pacer. My pacer showed up. We get out there. We get lost together a little bit on this out in this place, but doesn't matter. I get up there and I feel so fantastic, Cliff. I'm ready to go. I don't care. I'm like, I know I'm covering 100K, no problem. But I get up there and the reality is, well, that's true. But so I ask, I'm like, listen, can I just turn my bib? I'll pick it up later, right? Because I'm not trying to, here's my bib. Take my bib, but it's late. My pacer's here and I've already put on an extra 7.5 miles, so I'm still going to cover my 62, right? That's my 100K. And then he was like, they called the race director, and he's like, yeah, man, go for it. All good. Just do it, man. So they have my bib. Yep. So I was so happy to be able to do it because my objective was to run my Asian miles. I've been planning on it for too long. And so as that's happening, I have this opportunity to think for hours, right, about what that meant and the value of a DNF and the value of the selection of the race and what is my goal here? What am I really trying to do out here? And so it was probably the best 100K adventure that I've ever had. I know that had I finished the race and got it in time and got the medal, it would be just like finishing the race in time, get the medal. That's it. There's no way all this extra adventure in life that just happened, it would never have unfolded that way for me. So I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful that Gunhild has a great record. I'm grateful to hear the story from you because you did what you could do, man. You did what you could do, right? That's it.
the first year I did Fat Dog 120, I wound up DNFing, and I wound up DNFing for a number of reasons. I think back then I was still mixing, pre-mixing. Uh, I don't remember. It might have been like I might have had caffeine mixed in with my my tailwind and had too much caffeine. There may also have been a broken trekking pole, everything like that. But the year I was doing the Fat Dog 120, it was I think 124 miles long, and I wound up getting really far into it. Something like maybe like 118 miles in with like 5 hours to go, the remaining 6 miles. And I was in such a hurting state that I basically, I couldn't do it. And eventually they sent people up to help me down. There was no place to take me off the course. So I was going to have to finish the course on my own 2 feet regardless. And they sent people up and the volunteers were just super sweet and nice and everything like that. And they're like, let me take that, let me take that pack for you. And I'm like, no, that would be muling. And so like, I knew I wasn't going to get an official finish, but I wanted to, since I was going to do it on my own 2 feet, I wanted to do it without anybody carrying my pack. And then, and that's really super selfish because I'm slowing everybody down, but I didn't think about it immediately. So, I'm like, yeah, no, that would be muling. And then eventually, like, it dawns on me, like, dude, you're just like holding these people up. That's really, really rude. And once that's obvious, I'm like, oh no, take my pack. Let's go. So when I finished that race, I finished it on my own 2 feet, but I didn't finish it carrying all my own gear. The guy who came in I wasn't going to get a buckle. The guy who came in first gave me his buckle. And he didn't have a special one for coming in first, but he did have a special one for coming in, often races there'll be like a cutoff. And if you go faster than this, you get a bigger buckle or a flashier buckle or everything.
Yeah.
So he had a painted colored buckle, whereas the regular slower people get, this other guy came in first and he gave it, and he wrote up a trip report. And so I'm actually in his trip report. I mean, like one paragraph, like this guy finished even, blah, 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 blah. And he writes great trip reports, and you should follow him and read his stuff and whatnot. But, I had to go back the next year and finish that race. And that's one where there was one section that had so many bugs in it. I was just swearing my head off saying, there's no way, even if I don't finish this race, there's no way I'm coming back to this race again. This is bullshit. No, these bugs, no way. I don't care if I don't finish. I'm never doing this again. And then I DNF and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm back next year. And of course, next year I actually wore like a lightweight little like bug thing, and I looked like a goon, but other people were telling me like, dude, yeah, you did the right thing. I wish I had one of those. And I did finish. I did finish it, and eventually, years later, I gave the guy his buckle back, and I kept promising to give it back, and one thing would happen, or this or that, and yeah.
That's so sweet. That is so sweet. Talk to us about Caballo Blanco, Micah True. He's in Born to Run. It's iconic. 2010, the release of Born to Run, it just changes everything for decades, because people to this day, they pick up that book, or if somebody who's a runner, say, hey, have you read this book, right? So it has hit so many things. Christopher McDougall hit so many things. Scott Jurek hit so many things. And Micah True is the name of the Caballo Blanco, this white horse, who's this character in the book. A couple years later, and he'd been running forever, ever. A couple years later, he went out like he'd done many times, 1,000 times, and he was not able to come back. And so there was a giant search in 2012 for him. So I'll let you pick it up from there. What was you were running at that time, 2012? Clearly, you're in there. What was how did your running the story?
And I think that year I had already done pretty well at Bataan Memorial, and so I was a member of Search and Rescue, and so I'm like I would consistently show up for and perform many menial tasks at Search and Rescue, but I deliberately stayed away from like thinking. I'd just be dumb guy who'd carry shit. And I was happy to do that. I could potentially play a bigger role, but again, I'm lazy. I'm a satisficer. I wanna go out and I want to help and I want to do my part and everything like that. But the truth of the matter is, the intellectual portions of search and rescue are also pretty taxing in a way that the physical stuff isn't. So I'm content to go out there, and so we get a call, and the way search and rescue works is, when somebody's having issues in an area, they call the local teams first, and they don't call people from further away in the state until like stuff happens. So we wind up getting this call is they're not finding this guy in the Gila. We go down to the Gila, and we spend a few days, and we're not finding him, and it's weird because they're like elite athletes are showing up from around the country and maybe Canada and Mexico and showing up, and they're volunteering, but there are some hard and fast rules in search and rescue. Like, you can't let like a you can't let a somebody who hasn't done some of the qualification stuff go out by themselves as part of the mission. They have to have an actual person who's gone through the qualifications, doing them. So they're hamstringing these ultra runners, and they're basically saying, and they're not. It never really come up. So they're following the rules, and the rules say, Scott Jurek can't team up with Jamil and be buddies and just cover like 100 miles in 20 hours, even though they could. They're like, no, you've got to be paired up with search and rescue people who by and large are more athletic than the average person, but they're not elite ultra runners or what have you. There was a lot of frustration because it lasted a while, and nobody was finding him. And a gentleman named Ray Molina basically said, this is wrong. They're not finding this guy. I'm going to put together a team, and we're not going to do it within the confines of search and rescue. This is an unofficial thing. I'm just a friend. I'm going to go out. I'm going to look for him. And he looked and he found him. And so I was with my team, and we were relaxing after a days of a number of assignments. I got the news that his body had been found, and they wanted to put together a small team to go out with the guy who found the body, Ray Molina, and guard to make sure that animals didn't drag the body away, or crazy people who disrespectful, whatever. You're going to do this, and it was an honor to be on that team, but they knew, I have a fair amount of endurance, and there were other people on it, and it was, we start going out with Ray, and it's dark, and he's not wearing a headlamp, and I'm not trying to say, I'm not trying to be a mother hen, but it's like, don't you want a headlamp? He's like, no, there's the moon and the stars and stuff, and I'm like, okay, we're not going to force you to have a headlamp, and we're going along. Now, bear in mind, this isn't. I'm not like crazy ultra fatigued, but I'm also a little tired because I've been there for a few days. I'm not sleeping super well. I'm sleeping out in whatever, my sleeping bag and this and that. And we're going along. We're tooling along, and it's dark, and Ray's leading the way because he knows where the body is. And he not wearing a headlamp, and he's saying, "Oh, we've got to turn here. We want to go this way, but we got to turn here because there's a hazard." And you're thinking like, "Oh, wow, that's great. I'm glad you're helping us, Ray. And everything like that." And this keeps going on, and my mind starts going a little bit off into a tangent, and I'm thinking like, the only person who has seen the body as this guy, but we don't really actually know that he's seen the body, nor do we know how he kind of found him. And I'm not like a crazy cynical person, but I'm up tired and everything like that. And I'm starting to get like this creepy vibe, and I'm thinking like,
What?
dude, just calm down. Calm down. You're letting your brain get ahead of you. You're tired. Just keep this up. And then all of a sudden, Ray, out of nowhere, says, "Yeah, we're about to see a skeleton in a tree." And I'm like, "The fuck?" And he's like, "Yeah, I found like this elk skeleton, and so I put it in a tree." And my mind's like, just like, I do not understand this. Like, nobody does that. And second of all, we're out in the wilderness in the Gila, which is kind of roughish area. There's no way you're seeing in the dark. You put a skeleton in the tree, and we're going to see it. And I'm even trying to think like, do I say something? I mean, this is a fucking psycho. And so next thing you know, of course, there's a skeleton in a tree.
Dang.
And I'm like, okay.
Dang.
I whatever. And we keep tooling along and everything like that. And eventually, he's like, well, here he is, and there's the decedent, and he's and we're guarding his stuff, and he had placed some other people to watch him. We were spelling them. They had built a fire, and
Okay.
we hung out, and Ray told stories, and he's got stories, and I mean, it was definitely a sad situation. So I mean, I have a weepy issue, so I'm trying really to hold myself together. But it was kind of surreal and weird and sad, but we're still telling stories and we're guarding the body and everything like that. And eventually we get up the next day, and the next day we help get the the body out, and more people come and whatnot. And as we're going back, all those hazards that Ray was describing, I mean, they were really there.
If you need to breathe in this part, that's okay, man. People listening and watching, they get it. They understand. Yeah. All right. Now, with all these things, at first, I Born to Run was the first book that someone suggested I read. I had a stroke, and one of my repair modalities was to start walking. And I thought, if I have to walk, I'm going to poke my eyes out with pencils. I was in the military, but my knees got messed up and I had surgery, and I thought I was never going to run again. A friend of mine's like, "Do you ever heard of this Born to Run?" I was like, "No." So I read it, and immediately, like tens of thousands of other runners, I read it. And this is 2015 for me. And I'm like, okay, I'm in. Hook, line, and sinker, I'm in. So that book, and McDougall, but that book and Scott Jurek and people it's just touched so many lives. And I think it's just fascinating and wonderful to be a part of it. So thank you for sharing that.
Both Scott and Christopher McDougall came out to participate in the search, as did Jamil Curry. And I hate to actually start listing people's names because I don't, you don't want to forget people and everything like that. But I mean, it was just it was crazy. But I mean, Ray was the all-star hero.
Yeah. And when you shared with me the link, Christopher McDougall wrote an article in 2012 after Micah had passed, and named all the names and all that. So, and that was the first time that I'd seen Jamil Curry. I wouldn't have known Jamil Curry from anything in 2012, not at all. But it's somehow comforting. It's somehow comforting to see all these people who participate for so long in a sport that is continuing to grow and develop. Like Katra Corbett, right? She's one of the greatest of all times, and she's just been out there running and supporting people forever. And I love that. One thing that I seem to see happen, Cliff, is once you run long enough, and once you run enough races, and you volunteered at so many things, and you've helped at so many things, and so ultimately, in every instance, you end up being certainly well equipped and well qualified to direct a race, to become a race director, to help something get started. Often the stories I hear are that, well, I'm just helping a guy get it started, and then the race, all of a sudden it's a thing, and now I have to do the thing. So you're
Yeah.
not just that. You are the ruck guy. You're a race director. You're a local pillar in a community. The Baldy 50K, the Fat Ass events, the Academy of Pain. What a great title that is, Academy of Pain. Talk to me about any of those things, but talk to me about the role where you're not just a participant now, you help with an organizer.
No, so I'm not. I've allowed some races that would have died otherwise to exist on life support, and I started out almost killing a race because I went. It's one of my DNFs. I went out on it's a fat ass course, and it's part of it was part of the Albuquerque race series, and the race series has is typically had around 4 races in it each year, and 3 of them are like fairly safe and easiest, often looped courses where you could quit at any time. But there would be this one race that was added to the series, which is really a tough race. But it's gorgeous, and it's a real ass kicker. And if you're going to be training for Hardrock or what have you, you do this. And it was devised by a guy who was training to do the Grand Slam, and he did do the Grand Slam. And it's called the Baldy 50K. And so I did the Baldy 50K the first 2 years that it was available, and I finished it, and it's an ass kicker and whatnot. And then I think the 3rd year I didn't do the Baldy 50K because it interfered with something. I was out of town for it. And then the 4th year I want to do the Baldy 50K, and I was in a rush, and so like I printed the directions and put them in a Ziploc bag so that they wouldn't get wet and bleed and everything like that. And I'm like, I can do this race. I don't have to refresh the course and everything like that. And I've got the directions with me, and I know it's an ass kicker. And I do the course, and I actually wind up getting to a junction, and I don't know which direction I'm supposed to turn. And I'm like, I'm glad I have these directions. And I'm glad I put them in a plastic bag, because if I hadn't put them in a plastic bag, they'd have gotten wet and I wouldn't be able to read them. And then I read the thing, and the directions don't actually resolve which way you're supposed to go. They say you're going to hit this trail. It's called the Windsor Trail, and then you take it back to the parking lot. And I couldn't remember, do I go left here or do I go right? And if I go left, I'm going to be repeating some of the course, and I don't remember repeating the course, but I also remember that I have a shitty memory. And I can't, and then later I'm like, I remember that on this way back, the mountains are going to be on my left. And if I turn to the left, the mountain's going to be to my left. So I'm like, okay, I've used logic and a little bit of memory to solve this. And I keep tooling along. And I don't even think anything more about that because it's already solved, and, I'm doing everything like that. Well, then later I'm like back at a different point in the race, like way earlier. And I don't know how I got there. Well, of course it was the wrong turn that I took, but I didn't know that at the time. What I didn't know was if I had taken that turn to the right, you go a little ways, and then there's a hairpin turn, and you sort of go parallel, and so the mountains are still on your left. So it didn't matter whether I turned left or right, the mountains would be on my left. It's just that by turning left, I went the wrong way. So what I wound up doing is I wound up getting to a place in the race. It was late. I was low on calories. It was dark. I actually was training for Fat Dog, so I had my Fat Dog emergency gear with me, and I made the conscious decision to stay out overnight, not to be a dick and test my gear or anything like that, because in search and rescue, we would tell a person in that situation, do not try and be a hero and figure things out when you're really all tired, because I knew where I was. I was back on the course, but I was back miles back from where I was. I knew how to proceed, but since I didn't know what I had done wrong, I'm like, I don't know how I can do things differently. So the good part of me says, dude, just stay put, wait till light and everything like that. But the other part of me says, they're going to call search and rescue on you. And in fact they did. So, I mean, it was they called search and rescue on me, and it soured people on the race. And the race director's like, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. Sorry. And so I ruined the race. I spoiled it for everybody. And so I was like thinking like, this sucks. This is a great race and everything like that. So I took over, at least in name, and I've sort of continued the tradition. But other race directors will like mark courses and do a whole lot of stuff that I wouldn't do because I didn't make the time for it. So I would keep them alive and I'd post scores and this and that. But I did that with a Baldy 50K, and then some of the other races in the series, the race directors, they're just, it's been fun, but they didn't want to keep doing them, so I've taken over them. So I do the Baldy I do the Albuquerque Fat Ass Series, but I do a horrible job of them. But just enough people, and sometimes it's very few, show up that I continue doing it. But I'd rather get either more money and time and do it right, or get somebody else to do it. But I don't want the races to die, especially since I can still do a half-ass job, and whatever. But the Baldy 50K is tricky because now there's a crap ton of blowdown, and it's not the same, and it's
what does that
way
mean?
more
Blowdown. What do you mean? What do you mean?
Hmm?
What do you mean blowdown? What do you mean?
Trees that have fallen over that you have to
Oh,
go over, skirt around, and everything like that. And it's in a kind of tough portion. You have to filter your own water, which you have to do in other like races and whatnot. But it's such an oddball race for the series that I thought it would be actually good to introduce another, like a step in between. And so I tried to make another race to add to the series, and could never get any traction and whatnot. So I'm not a very good race director, but I'm better than nothing, and I haven't killed anybody yet.
and you're a great storyteller though, so let's keep that at the top of the list here, because as long as you keep telling stories like that, people are going to come out. So thank you for telling me what that is. I appreciate it. All right, man. As we head toward the final lap here, you're 62, going to be 63 in a minute, and you're taking care of your 93-year-old mom. Does she still? Talk to me about that. And you're taking care of her. Is she able to? Does she walk you? I can't. I was trying to figure out what happened. Do you walk her around every day, or what
No.
happens? And how does aging happen when you're taking care of a very aged parent, and you yourself are, you continue to get older every day?
Well, I don't remember how old my friend Labe is, but Labe is another guy that I've met through ultra running, and he helps out with his 102-year-old mom. So there's always somebody else, who's one-upping you. But my mom had a stroke a couple weeks after Bataan Memorial 2 years ago, and it was bad enough to really interfere with I guess her right side and this and that and what have you. And then after the stroke messed up her mind enough that it was really hard to tell exactly what all's going on. But basically, once she got out of inpatient rehab, she had to have somebody living with her. And my sister did it for 6 weeks and then wasn't able to do it. And so I moved in without any advance notice, and I was there, mostly to sort of mind my mom and walk with her walker and this and that. But I used my understanding of how the body works and this and that to make some lifestyle changes with her, and this and one thing led to another. And so she now she leads a very regimented life, but she enjoys it. I mean, I'm not forcing her to do stuff, and she's gotten benefits out of it. She drinks some coffee, gets ready, and then we go out and we walk a 1.6 mile route. And then she mostly does stuff by herself. And then later, and she free walks. So when I say free walk, I mean without her walker or a cane or
Wow.
anything like that. Both recover from the stroke, but also um, lost some weight and gained some fitness. And I'm like, well, let's try free walking. Let's just see if we can, like free walk a few hundred yards. And one thing led to another, and now she free walks 1.6 with me with her walker, so that I can have her sit in her walker when she needs a rest. She does it. She does it before breakfast, and she bought into the whole deal where you've got to have a breakfast to do your stuff, and I bought into it too. I mean, we were told that all our lives, you know. But she does that without breakfast, and then later she comes back. She makes her own breakfast. She makes an omelet every day, and this and that, and blah blah blah. And then later she'll go out without me and do that old loop that she used to, but she now does it with her walker, and sometimes she'll rest and sometimes she won't. But that's after she's done the 1.6 miles. And she's on Strava. So you can see her activity and whatnot. And she's having trouble with memory and she's having trouble with cognition. But she'll see this and she won't. I don't think she'll be offended. I think she'll realize it. And we also do memory exercises as we're going down. So we're learning the names of different plants, like this is cholla, this is prickly pear, this is a mimosa, and the names of the streets that we're on, which I didn't know initially. I mean, just didn't know them, but now I know them. And now then we've moved on to like navigation, like are we headed north, south, east, west? It's all rectilinear, and whatnot. And I try to work on her mind so that it's beneficial.
My mom has. We thought she was leaving. She had a stroke a couple years ago now, which seems so bizarre. And we thought she was gone. She was in a coma. She was out and gone, we thought. And then she wasn't gone. She came back. But there's still artifacts, still things that are, and dementia is very real, and it's very hard and taxing on my brother. But it's okay. It is part of life. This has been a fantastic conversation, my friend. I look forward to more of it. I look forward to seeing you and Peter out there on the course sometime, maybe Bigfoot next year. We'll see. I think it'll be really good. Two things I do as I close it out. Let me know, has your why, because of the way you're now caretaking mom, I'm very interested in this answer. So has your why do I run? Why do I do crazy things, hard things? Has that changed over time for you as you get older?
I mean, if you look at it, if you zoom in enough, I mean, like I haven't done search and rescue since January 1st of 2021, and so the training for Bataan Memorial went hand in hand with search and rescue, and now I don't do that, and I do it kind of out of inertia. But I had said that I was going to do it while the other vets were still showing up. Well, almost all of them are dead now. I mean, it happens, and none of them showed up this year. But I've gotten to meet vets of more recent wars who were younger than I am, and so I still do the Bataan Memorial, but I'm not getting any benefit for search and rescue because I'm not doing search and rescue. So in that sense, it's like it's changed, but it hasn't changed, in a great way. I believe that what I do with my body helps my mind and helps me do better at my job. But I don't know that for a fact because when I worked as a consultant, I would know how well I'm doing by like they pay me and like me and praise me and keep me. But I've been working on my own for a while, and the question is, am I really doing as well as I think I'm doing? And that one's a harder one to gauge. But I still think that I have a lot of hobbies, and I enjoy playing pool. I enjoy drinking. I enjoy all sorts of things, but the running actually, I think, helps my brain and helps my body. So in that sense, I run. I get the runner's high, and there are runners who don't, and they still run. But I get the runner's high, so I enjoy it. But I think it's actually healthy for me. So in that sense, no.
If you had to write a short note to your younger self, the guy who would never run a marathon, the guy who certainly would never run a 100-mile race, the guy who would never run a 200-mile race, that guy, what would you say in that note?
Don't ride a bicycle on little sleep below freezing weather. That might seem oddly specific, but there are reasons.
Oh, man. Cliff Matthews, you are a closer. Ladies and gentlemen, he is a closer. You see that? Save the best for last in that last minute. Cliff, it's been an absolute joy and a pleasure. I've appreciated this conversation. I'm glad it was well worth the wait. Thank you for your patience in helping me kind of get this, put this together. Thank you for sending me some of those great photos. I'll do my best in post to really make sure I throw up on the screen all the various things that we're kind of referring to. So with that, I think we did it, man. We crushed it. I think we
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to the drive down to the race tomorrow, so I can get close to caught up with your stuff. I save them for my driving because I have my stuff planned in advance. I know how long it takes to drive. I know how long your episodes are, and I get to do that on my drive down and back. So
all right.
care.
Well, crush the race. Good to see you. Crush the race. And that's it. We'll see you on the trails.
Okay, bye bye.